you think international communities has right focus in the development of Pakistan?
What do you? Do you think it has, or do you think it's got wrong focus?
Well, this is a question.
Yeah, no, I'm asking you. You tell me and I'll tell you.
The international communities has right focus in the development of Pakistan?
Yeah. I think that it's got a better focus than it had. It's thinking about institutions that can sustain themselves. It's thinking about economy and education, not just security. It's thinking about how Pakistan fits into a South Asian region that addresses its common problems. I mean, for example, the drugs that come from Afghanistan to Britain also come to Pakistan. The drugs from Afghanistan also go to Iran. The drugs from Afghanistan also go to Russia. So there are some common issues. There aren't necessarily the institutions or the policies to address them, or the frameworks to address them. But I think that the international community has got a better attitude than it did. I think that maybe it's not very diplomatic to say this, but the American administration have committed to the Kerry-Lugar bill. Now, I think for a lot of, there's all sorts of debates in Pakistan I know about this. But for those of in the outside world, it's kind of slightly odd for a country that's being offered $1.5 billion to be saying how terrible this is and what an insult it is to be offered this. Now, I know people are saying, hang on, what about the strings attached and all the rest of it? But I think that's an indication that the American government, it's not my job to speak for them, but they want to do what we've been doing for some time, which is to invest in the future, education, health, etc. That's a good thing, not a bad thing.
Beyond security, very quickly though, would Britain support the re-entry of the military dictatorship in Pakistan?
No, we support democracy in Pakistan.
That's it now, no more military.
What do you mean now? I don't know about now. I mean, we support democratic government in Pakistan, civilian government. We want this government to run its course.
Okay. Sir, I would like to ask you, why are you interested in the Pakistani youth, and why there is a sudden shift of attention towards Pakistan?
I don't think it's sudden. I mean, to be fair, we were very interested in this country 60 years ago, and but it's not sudden. I think that Pakistan has become more important as the difficulties in Afghanistan have become clear in the last 15 years. Some of the mistakes in the 80s and 90s have become clearer. Pakistan is a vital partner in finding solutions to Afghanistan's problems. And let's be absolutely honest about this, the fact that 70% of the terrorism that happens in the UK has links back to the Afghan-Pakistan border means, my God, we've got to be interested in you. I mean, we've got to be interested, even if not just out of personal interest or cultural affinity or historic ties. We've got a clear and present interest, and we know that terrorism is a threat to Pakistan as well as a threat to Britain.
Very quickly, you.
What steps you have taken for the youth of Pakistanis, the job opportunities in your country?
Well, in our country, we have not just equal opportunity legislation, not just big investment in educational and employment opportunity. We have a much more open society than we had 20 years ago. And that gives more opportunities for people if they're willing to take them. I think that's the secret of a healthy society.
Can I? Okay. As you said, in your past trips to Pakistan, you visit the delegation or the chairperson of the Youth Parliament of Pakistan. What do you like to say about that?
I thought it was, I mean, there were two things I remember. First of all, it was a parliament, but they weren't elected. They've been,
because it is actually that is the first initiative that has been taken.
Yeah, I mean, so the first thing was it was an appointed parliament, not an elected parliament. So I sort of thought that was quite interesting. Secondly, the voices that I heard there were extremely articulate and impressive, very unafraid to say how much they thought Britain was wrong, or Europe was wrong, or America was wrong. But I also reflected in retrospect, none of the 70% of Pakistanis who don't go to secondary school were reflected in that parliament. It was very much the upper crust who've been to university and now work for Standard Chartered or something, not the...
Would you like to assist them?
Of course.
On whatever you were saying.
One of the things that I think we try to do through the British Council is to reach out beyond the conventional circles. Look, I like going to university audiences and talking to them, but sometimes you've got to go beyond that. And that's certainly what we try to do. And the British Council, which is independent of the government but is funded by the taxpayer, is our best way to reach out and promote the sort of initiatives, sometimes you have to do it locally. I mean, I went to Multan with the foreign minister last time I was in Pakistan, and you get a different feeling if you do things there than just if you do things in Islamabad.
The Youth Parliament are very important partners of ours on the Active Citizens programme, and we're working with them in social action programmes in the communities, so trying to engage young people who are in danger of being excluded.
And you're exchanging youth of Britain and Pakistan as well?
We also have exchange programmes for youth. Yes, that's right, community exchange programmes, yeah.
I just want to ask one thing, that we are focusing upon the issues like poverty, the representation of youth and this and that, but we at first should understand that if there is going to be an economic and political stability in a country, after that the country can focus on such kind of issues. So at first, why don't we think to bring political and economic stability in the nation? We are still stuck between democracy and dictatorship, and if you see, democracy has not been stable in Pakistan if you see the history, and if you see the facts and figures, the economic growth has been more better in dictatorship. So how we are going to choose between democracy and dictatorship regarding economic growth, or regarding the, you can say, psyche, or the you can say economic systems of other nations, for example Europe. You say that yes, we support democracy, but why don't you consider other things? Because if we are feeling easy with dictatorship, then we should be following that. Meaning,
it's slightly a contradiction in terms to say that the people want dictatorship, because the definition of dictatorship is that no one asks the people. But I mean, I've never heard the statistic before that dictatorship is related to economic growth. I mean, they said about Mussolini that he made the trains run on time, but I've never heard that, and I've never seen that.
We're having tremendous economic growth rates.
Well, I think that, I mean, we can go back through the history. One of the things is that sometimes you have to look at the statistics. The statistics are being looked at in a rather different way now than they were in the early 2000s, when some of the claims were being made. But in the end, you've got to choose. It's your society, it's your country. You'll have to choose whether or not it's a country where people have a say or whether they don't. And you'll have to decide whether or not you do that. It's not up to me. We used to run this country, we don't anymore. And it's up to you how you go forward.
But you happen to be the advisors.
Well, yes, but the thing about, we have this expression that advisors advise but ministers decide, and in this case, advisors advise but the people decide, and you'll have to decide.
One question about your Foreign Secretary, British Foreign Secretary, but also represent the Commonwealth, of course. Does the Commonwealth have as much influence in this region as it used to?
Well, I think that the Commonwealth is changing. The Commonwealth is changing from a group of just 7 or 8 countries in the 1950s when it was first started to now over 50 countries, quarter of the world's population. Quite a significant breadth now. Rwanda has just joined the Commonwealth, so it's quite a different organisation. I think that the Commonwealth faces big choices about how it's going to make itself relevant, because for your generation it's got to be a different kind of relevance than for your grandparents' generation. Because for your grandparents' generation there was a very much more recent memory of British rule, and now the links are different, and I think that it's a much more equal partnership of 50 plus countries, and your Foreign Minister represented Pakistan at the last Commonwealth meeting, which was in November in Trinidad and Tobago. It's a unique institution, it's got a special spirit, but we've got to give it real purpose. If it was up to me, I would make climate change the defining challenge of the Commonwealth. Because if in 20 years' time the Commonwealth has said we've made a difference on climate change, my goodness, people would think, well, that's a relevant institution that speaks to the modern world.
But it's not now.
It's not doing enough now because it's going through this period of change and thought. If you're interested, go to the Royal Commonwealth Society is running a thing called the Commonwealth Conversation at its website. And that's about saying, look, the Commonwealth's got to change. And if you don't change, you get into trouble.
Thanks everyone for your questions, and I'd like to thank British Foreign Secretary David Miliband for being with us today, and of course Country Director for the British Council David Martin for being and spending all that time with the youth of Pakistan. This was Pakistan, the Next Generation. You've been watching a Dawn News special. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.